On August 28, 2025, the Trump administration shocked the world by imposing a sweeping 50% tariff on over $10 billion worth of Indian goods. This bold move escalated what had been a simmering trade dispute into a full-blown economic standoff, sending shockwaves through global markets and diplomatic circles alike. The announcement came with little warning, catching both Indian officials and international observers off guard, and immediately raising questions about the future of one of the world's most important bilateral relationships. The tariffs specifically target some of India's most vital exports: textiles, pharmaceuticals, auto parts, and steel, industries that have long been the backbone of India's export economy. These sectors support millions of jobs and are deeply integrated into global supply chains, many of which have been built up over decades of cooperation between the two countries. Now those supply chains face unprecedented disruption, threatening not just Indian businesses, but also American companies that rely on affordable imports. This latest move follows an earlier 25% tariff, signaling a dramatic hardening of the U.S. stance. The administration's willingness to risk a vital partnership with India marks a significant shift in American trade policy, one that could have ripple effects far beyond the two countries involved. The White House frames the action as a necessary response to what it calls India's unfair trade practices. But the fallout is immediate and far-reaching. Businesses on both sides of the ocean are thrown into uncertainty, costs begin to rise, and years of painstakingly built cooperation seem to unravel overnight. Investors react nervously, and the global business community watches closely, aware that this could signal a new era of economic nationalism. For years, the US and India have worked together to counterbalance China's growing influence in Asia, forging strategic and economic ties. Now this trade war threatens to undermine that partnership, and risks pushing India to seek new alliances, potentially even with rivals the US once hoped to contain. Indian exporters scramble to assess the damage, facing canceled orders and mounting losses, while American firms brace for higher costs, supply delays, and the challenge of finding alternative suppliers. The uncertainty ripples through both economies, affecting workers, consumers, and investors alike. What was once a story of shared values and mutual benefit is now a cautionary tale, an example of how quickly protectionism and political brinkmanship can unravel years of progress, trust, and collaboration between nations. The Trump administration's tariffs are about more than just trade policy. They're a signal of a shifting world order and a new era of economic confrontation. At the heart of the dispute is India's growing appetite for Russian oil, which Washington argues is helping to fund Moscow's ongoing war in Ukraine. The US sees these purchases as undermining Western sanctions and weakening the global effort to isolate Russia. The White House has made it clear, the tariffs are a direct response to India's refusal to cut back on Russian energy imports. This puts New Delhi in the crosshairs of a high-stakes global power struggle, as the US tries to pressure India into aligning with Western interests. But oil isn't the only issue. The US also points to a ballooning $28 billion trade deficit with India, which American officials argue is evidence of an unbalanced economic relationship that needs to be addressed. On top of that, India's digital taxes on American tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Amazon have become a major sticking point, fueling further grievances and adding to the sense of economic rivalry. The administration's approach is one of maximum pressure, using tariffs and economic leverage in hopes that India's deepening ties to the US market will force it to reconsider its stance on Russia and trade. Yet critics argue this strategy exposes a double standard. Other countries continue to trade with Russia without facing similar penalties, making the US appear selective, self-interested, and even hypocritical in its application of economic pressure. This hardline approach risks alienating one of America's most important democratic partners in Asia, potentially driving India to seek new alliances and partnerships elsewhere. In the long run, such tactics could undermine the credibility of US foreign policy, raising questions about America's reliability as a global leader and partner. Ultimately, these tariffs are less about upholding principle and more about leveraging a complex geopolitical moment, using economic tools to advance American interests in an increasingly multipolar world. India's response has been swift and defiant, condemning the tariffs as unjustified and vowing to challenge them at the World Trade Organization. New Delhi frames the dispute as a test of its strategic autonomy, refusing to bow to U.S. pressure on energy security. Foreign Minister Jaishankar questions why the U.S. singles out India while sparing others, highlighting the perceived hypocrisy. In a bold counter, India signals plans to increase Russian oil imports, citing economic necessity and discounted prices. This is more than a trade dispute. It's a statement of India's intent to chart its own course, even at economic cost. India also leverages diplomacy, positioning itself as a potential peacemaker in Ukraine to boost its global standing. The message to Washington is clear: India will not be coerced into abandoning its interests. India's surge in Russian oil imports has transformed global energy flows and deepened its economic ties with Moscow. Before 2022, Russian oil was less than 3% of India's imports. By mid-2024, it soared to nearly 40%. In August 2025, India imports 1.5 million barrels of Russian oil daily, a strategic partnership with major geopolitical implications. For India, cheap Russian oil is vital for inflation control and energy security. For Russia, it's a lifeline against Western sanctions. The discounts save India billions, but also put it in Washington's crosshairs. The US demands economic sacrifice for a shared geopolitical goal, while India prioritizes its own growth and stability. This fundamental clash over Russian oil is the heart of the current crisis. The trade war is a direct result of these irreconcilable priorities. The trade war is the result of years of mounting tension, reignited by Trump's return to the White House and India's deepening energy ties with Russia. As India's Russian oil imports climbed, Washington's patience wore thin. The first 25% tariff in August 2025 was a warning. When India didn't yield, the US doubled down to 50%, explicitly linking the move to Russian oil. Each escalation has pushed the two democracies further apart, with both sides digging in. India, undeterred, plans to boost Russian oil imports by up to 20% in September, a direct challenge to US pressure. The rapid escalation reveals a dangerous cycle of action and reaction. The world watches as the conflict deepens, threatening global economic stability. The stakes have never been higher for US-India relations. The US-India trade war's impact will be felt far beyond their borders. American consumers face higher prices on everyday goods, while US industries reliant on Indian components brace for supply chain chaos. For India, the loss of US market access threatens jobs and growth, especially in textiles and pharmaceuticals. If India is forced to cut Russian oil, global prices could skyrocket, hurting developing nations and Western allies alike. The conflict erodes trust in global trade institutions, encouraging more protectionism and retaliation worldwide. This dispute is a symptom of a broader shift toward deglobalization and economic nationalism. The world economy grows more fragmented and more vulnerable. Leaders on both sides have dug in, with the US vowing to maintain tariffs until India cuts Russian oil imports. Vice President J.D. Vance and advisor Kevin Hassett insist the US won't back down, framing economic might as diplomacy. Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar counters, calling out US double standards and defending India's right to independent policy. Experts warn of severe supply chain disruptions, especially in pharmaceuticals, and the risk of a global recession if oil prices spike. The personal rapport between Trump and Modi has soured, replaced by public confrontation. India hedges its bets, strengthening ties with other global powers as the US relationship frays. Both sides talk past each other, making a quick resolution unlikely. The world watches as two giants clash over principle, power, and economic survival. The future of US-India relations hangs in the balance, with three possible paths ahead. The choices made in the coming months will not only impact these two nations, but could also send ripples across the global stage, affecting economies, alliances, and the very nature of international cooperation. The best-case scenario is a diplomatic compromise. India reduces Russian oil imports, signaling its willingness to work with the US on key global issues, while still protecting its own energy security and economic interests. In response, the US rolls back tariffs, opening the door for renewed trade and investment, and sending a message that dialogue can overcome even the toughest disagreements. Both sides save face, demonstrating to the world that compromise and mutual respect are still possible in a divided era. But more likely, entrenched positions mean prolonged disruption, higher prices for consumers, supply chain pain for businesses, and possible retaliatory tariffs that could escalate tensions even further. This conflict could mark a new normal, Less partnership, more confrontation, and a world where economic and political interests increasingly collide. India may double down on its multi-alignment strategy, forging new partnerships with other global powers, and seeking to balance its interests between East and West. The US, meanwhile, may have to accept that allies won't always align with its interests in a multipolar world where influence is shared and power is more diffuse. The outcome will shape global trade, alliances, and the rules of engagement for international relations in the years ahead. It will also test the effectiveness of sanctions as a tool of foreign policy, and determine how nations respond to economic pressure in an interconnected world. This is a defining test of India's rise as a global power, and its ability to navigate complex international challenges while maintaining its own sovereignty. It's also a moment of reckoning for America's first foreign policy, as it weighs the costs and benefits of confrontation versus cooperation. The choices made now will determine whether the world's two largest democracies drift apart, setting a precedent for future conflicts, or find a new way forward, forging a partnership that can withstand the pressures of a rapidly changing world.